Triple H comes out. So the last half hour was dedicated to the Roman Reigns ceremony. The last clip was Reigns beating Cody at WrestleMania. And dude, Triple H says, we are experiencing greatness. What Muhammad Ali was to boxing, what Michael Jordan was to basketball, we are witnessing in WWE with Roman Reigns. A man you will tell your children and your grandchildren about. A man so great that he never defends his title, and we've got to create another one because we need a working man's title.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like last time we saw Triple H, his words were completely the opposite.
It was like he was like running down Roman Reigns, like this part-time champion. And then here it's like, to me, it was such a contrast from like, I'm watching the segments, like what is the logic of adding this title on Raw? Like we are putting, like we've got Muhammad Ali here and we're creating another title. So then Hunter's created another title here because he congratulates him on surpassing 1,000 days and presents him with the new undisputed, still called the undisputed WWE Universal Championship. And so Roman is handed this. I seriously thought he was going to throw this down. If you go and watch his face, he looked so unimpressed with this thing. He looked like, what is this? And then he just kind of like, okay, and poses with it. But it looked like he was about to heel on this title belt that it felt, if he was seeing this for the first time legit, I bought it.
It was a facial reaction that I think was at least up to interpretation. I mean, I'm assuming he was trying to convey like surprise at how beautiful it was, but it could have also been interpreted as surprise at how ugly it is. Because listen, it's the same design as all the other ones, just with the color swap, right, of the gold and the black, and completely as unimaginative as I think you would expect. It's just they want billboards for their celebrity endorsements whenever they hold these belts. I just can't get over the fact that they still call it an undisputed championship. And in fact, like putting it on the belt itself. I mean, do they not know the definition of the word?
No, they don't. Clearly. Yeah. My hope is that he's going to wear all three of these belts and not get rid of the other two. That's what I want. I want him just to wear three.
Just do the Ultimo Dragon, like, you know, wear a belt on every arm, multiple belts around his waist.
Yeah, this was just unbelievable. I want to alert people. We did a lot of shows this week. We did quite a few. And if you missed any of them, well, why are you even here? You should be catching up.
What's the matter with you?
I mean, why you would be missing all the gold, which would include our latest edition of Rewind Away, number 132. We are chatting NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 2. For many people, maybe their peak of NXT fandom in the summer of 2016. It was a very different industry some 7 years ago when Shinsuke Nakamura was challenging Samoa Joe for the NXT title. Asuka and Bayley had their rematch, and the Revival taking on DIY. So we not only go into the show, but with these Rewind Aways, we always kind of dive into the time period as it was and looking at how NXT functioned as a greater part of WWE in the summer of 2016. And throughout this whole era, it was tremendously well received by the audience, but how was it working in terms of a vehicle to send stars up to the main roster? So a lot of interesting discussions about where NXT was in this period. Was it serving its function as a developmental brand? And ultimately where many of these performers would go that were featured on their follow-up at the Barclays Center after debuting in that building the year prior. So the pyro's going off as he holds up his toy, and then the Usos walk out from the back to their theme, and Jimmy just walks right into the ring and gets face to face with Roman Reigns. So maybe we will await if Heyman calls Adam Pearce on this, and Pearce let them in or something like that. So they could tie that loose end up, but it was a pretty glaring hole when you had set up all this earlier. Reigns tells Jay, kick Jimmy in the face, because that's what he did to me. Fix this. And Jay is very torn here between his brother and Roman Reigns. Jimmy says, the only thing that needs fixing is you. Reigns hasn't been a good brother of late, and you have betrayed and beat down your own family. You've gone crazy. And I will protect Jay and Solo because they are my brothers, and warn Solo that when he's done with you, he'll betray you and abuse you. Reigns asks Solo, why don't you speak for yourself and state who you're loyal to? So the microphone is handed over to Solo, who has to look down and says, I acknowledge you, my tribal chief. and the audience boos. But these two right here, they're my brothers. And he walks across the ring and stands with his brothers, the Usos. And Jimmy asks Roman if they want to run with this with respect, or Roman, you can end up on the island of relevancy. Reigns tells him to shut his mouth, and Jimmy pie faces him. And this crowd reacts like he had just super kicked him with an explosive shoe. That's how stunned they were at this. And Jay gets between them, states, we're better than this. Jay was awesome in this segment. Like,
I think they were all awesome, but
they were all really good. But man, Jay is just, to me, like, he's just great in all of these spoken segments. Jimmy says we're stronger together. Reigns has always been their brother. And Reigns is thinking about this, and he wipes his face. He's still got the feeling of Jimmy's hand against his face as he wipes it off. He hugs Jimmy, and he's got the microphone, and he's getting emotional. But then he just puts the microphone to his mouth and says, no. And with that, Solo hits Jimmy, his own brother, with the Samoan spike. Solo stares at Jimmy as Jay is tending to him, and Solo leaves with Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman. And as Reigns is walking to the back, he tells Heyman and Solo that Jay will do what he always does, fall in line. So the question here, it is very clear where Roman is situated, where Solo is loyal to. We know that Jimmy is on the other side. Where does Jay fall? Jay is the one caught in the middle, and that's how it ended the show. Just a tremendous segment to end the show. And I would think that you're, like we were talking about, when do they go to the tag match? I see the tag match potentially as SummerSlam and Roman and Jimmy at Money in the Bank. That's my thought.
Okay.
Out of this.
Interesting. Yeah, very possible. I think a lot of ways you can really play it.
I think it's too early at this point to define where.
Can you do SummerSlam? Can you do SummerSlam without a Roman Reigns singles defense though? I
think this tag match is as big as they've got at this point, rather than heating up a challenger at this point. I think it's big enough. Like, this is the biggest story, and I think doing this match, that to me is something you could do at SummerSlam. And you've got your non-disputed world heavyweight champion.
What if they flipped it, had the Usos beat Roman in the tag team match, and then do a singles match or three-way even? Well, that'd be tough, but I don't know. But something tells me they'll want like all the championships defended at SummerSlam, just because it's a big show. But we'll see. There are a lot of ways they can play it. Now that Succession is over, this is the family drama that I'm going to have to rely on. And they continue to deliver. This was a classic Bloodline segment, slowly paced, wonderfully long pauses, great intense facial expressions from everybody, family members caught in between, family members switching sides. It's everything you'd want out of a Bloodline segment. You thought Jay was great. I thought Solo was fantastic here. Again, for a dude with such limited experience, he does that sort of subtle, silent thing perfectly. Like, just the look he gave when he had to decide between his brothers or Roman Reigns, I thought he perfectly conveyed. And I thought the segment did a great job of furthering Jimmy Uso as a big time babyface. When he pie faced Roman, that was like a heroic act, because we've never seen any member of the Bloodline. I mean, save for Sami Zayn, I suppose, in the matches, but like, we've never seen any of the Usos nor Solo get that physical with Roman Reigns, and he did it to the tribal chief. And he comes across, at least in comparison to Jimmy comes across like more of a doer, somebody who's a bit more sure of himself and lacks Jay's indecisiveness, which seems to be one of Jay's, characteristics. But that sort of like, boldness can get Jimmy into trouble. And I love the fact that everybody kind of has their own personality.
Yeah, I thought it was executed really well, and they certainly had the time to do it with this last half hour of the show. And yeah, I think that this is going to do a really strong number for SmackDown. Number one, they didn't have any NBA or NHL to deal with tonight, so that alone, they should likely win the night. And coming off of the pay-per-view with this 1,000-day celebration, I think people knew that there's probably something of significance. And for a half hour to dedicate to this segment, I'll be very curious to see how big the audience was for that last half hour. 4 shows on the cafe this week. We also had the return of the double shot, chatting about the debut of this season's edition of Dark Side of the Ring, covering Chris and Tammy on Chris Candido and Tammy Sitch. So Wai and I are going to be doing these Wednesday nights on the cafe immediately after Rewind to Dynamite. So we go about a half hour chatting about the life of Chris Candido and, of course, Tammy Sitch as well. And if you want to get more information on this episode and the season to come, we do have a chat that Brandon Thurston and I did with Evan Husney that is up on the site on both the Post Wrestling and WrestleNomics feeds this week. And then coming up this weekend, we should say, Karen Peterson and Bruce Lord will be reviewing New Japan's Dominion card, which has 9 matches, 7 of which are for titles. So that is coming up on Sunday. Headlined by Yota Tsuji. I still can't get over that one. Yota Tsuji headlining Dominion of all shows.
Well, Yota Tsuji versus Sonata, is that a match you would have envisioned 4 months ago?
No, I mean, we're talking about being amazed of Yota Tsuji. I would not have predicted Sonata headlining this card a couple of months back, but it's an interesting time in New Japan. You've also got Hiromu against Master Wato, which I'm way more intrigued by after the Best of the Super Juniors. And I guess from the AEW side, you have Jon Moxley and Claudio Castagnoli teaming with Shota Umino. And hanging over this event is the speculation whether there's an appearance by Kenny Omega or if there's just other angles setting up directions for Forbidden Door, which is what I would expect some of the matches to lead to, because once Dominion is out of the way on Sunday, then I expect a full court press for Forbidden Door and building up that show, which is only a couple of weeks away that you've got to get that card put together.